Hey Sprocketeers, welcome to the third-party engineering and acquisition of British Armour Group T.E.A.B.A.G competition, The Results. Today we'll be going over the results of Round 8. Yes, I know that was a long time ago, and these results are, well, preposterously late, for which I do apologise. The process for judging and presenting these results gets more elaborate each round, and now it takes a team of 5 of us to make them happen. That's 5 real lives which can throw spanners in the works, and 5 real lives which we need to find the spare time in. And we all happen to be boring old adults with full-time jobs and partners or even children, so, well, it just means that the results are ready when they're ready, I'm afraid. But I am committed to making sure a new challenge will always be posted on the second Monday of each month, and that the results will be posted before the closing date for submissions on the following challenge. It's the best I can do, I'm afraid. I couldn't guarantee anything more than that and deliver on it at this point.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
Quite right. Now, for the 8th main round of T.E.A.B.A.G, I challenge you to build me a new cruiser tank that should be capable of over 30 miles per hour. And to facilitate that, I let loose the Napier Lion engine for you, a compact W12 engine with a handy horsepower advantage over the Liberty engine. It was never used in tanks in real life, but it was, I understand, considered as a potential power plant. Today, we will answer that what if by revealing the most successful design out of our 27 lovely contestants for this round. And I use the words most successful very deliberately because, yet again, the quality of all the entries was so very high, and you all have a lot to be proud of. Please don't think that just because your tank doesn't get a mention in this video, that it was in any way a failure. Far from it. It is simply the case that this contest has now been going for almost a year, and our veteran contestants are getting frighteningly good at this. In fact, that's another reason for taking longer these days to judge the contest. It's getting harder and harder to differentiate the frontrunners as they draw ever closer to perfect scores across the board, and we sometimes have to go over the scores multiple times, redefining perfection as we go. As ever then, I owe a huge thank you to my team of assistant judges for their time and hard work on making this contest happen, and of course, to you as well, all of you who submitted entries. Without your designs, there would be no contest at all. Now, without further ado, let's get on to the reason you're all here, the results. Starting us off this time, it's the aesthetics category. Mainly because it's my favourite, and it looks nice at the start of the video, so it's useful for that sweet viewer retention that the YouTube algorithm loves so much. Here your designs are judged based on the level of visual detail they have, their era appropriateness, and how well they fit the nation they have been designed in and for. Finally, an X Factor score covers things like novelty, imagination, and clever use of fixtures. From this moment forward, I am dispensing with the top 5 method of presenting the category results, because most of the time you lot seem to think it was funny to have about 12 of you all come in with a joint second place score and muck it all up anyway. So I thought to myself, sod that for a game of soldiers, we're going with a new medals based system. Our bronze medalists in this aesthetics category, they being all of those with the 3rd best score, are then the SN Mark IV by Commander AS2, the Cold Heart by a Mad Monarch, and the A35 Bulldog by +Add1211. Our silver medalists in the aesthetics category are the Calabolg by Katze316 and the Templar by Coaxium. And the aesthetics category winner is the HMCM 1941 by Comrade Kopnik. My, look at this beauty. Those of you who know me better than most will be aware that I am a lover of all things vehicular, not just tanks, and I adore cars. So imagine my delight when Comrade Kopnik gave me what I can only describe as the tank equivalent of a Lamborghini Countach, if the Lambo was in fact British to play with. Don't touch the seam between the upper and lower glacis, it will cut you. This thing looks fast standing still, and that's a real feat when designing a tank at the best of times, but to achieve that while also remaining faithful to British tank design tropes, well, that requires real skill. A complete suite of custom British decals helps not only the detail but also the national identity score here. The running gear and hull and turret forms are all quintessentially British, and the national identity score is topped off by the classic British cruiser track type and persistent use of riveted construction. Those rivets also lend more detail, as do the custom exhausts and all the viewports and optics detailing that has been nicely integrated into the turret. The icing on the detail cake, however, has to be this insane chainwork, which must have taken hours, and takes chains to a whole new level with the complexity and, crucially, the irregularity, the organic shapes they form here. It's remarkable. X Factor, meanwhile, is pinned to the max here because, well, because of all of the above, but mostly just look at it. I want one. You want one. I've never wanted to zoom around in World of Tanks in anything so much as I long to do so in this tank, the HMCM 1941. It just misses out on a perfect score though because, well, while the hull and turret forms do make you think British tank, and while the Crusader was very futuristic in its general swoopiness, this design definitely tips more towards FV4202 in overall form, less mid-40s than it is mid-50s, and that hurts its era-appropriateness score, I'm afraid. But please, Comrade Kopnik, don't change a damn thing about it. It's gorgeous. Now, if only we could shoehorn a meteor into it. The next category, please. It's the Proving Grounds category, where we take your tanks down to the sandbox and put them through their paces to test their mobility. Obviously an important category for a fast cruiser tank. Here we're looking for well-tuned suspensions and transmissions that balance speed, acceleration and reversing ability with hill climbing, trench crossing, obstacle crossing and more. The bronze medalists on the Proving Grounds were, well, they were numerous, so in no particular order: the Lagan Cruiser by initialate Epsilon, the LIA 30 M1 Cardinal by 28th Stab Wound, the MSC T8 by Mao, the GDAV 826 Chaplain by Drallo, and the Cold Heart by Hamad Monarch. Silver medals go to the MTKZ 1A1 by F. Cave Troll, and the C41 FCT by Terry Arnis. But victory on the Proving Grounds goes to the Albino Heavy Industries Canteen by Albino Creeper. The stature of this little lightning bruiser alone ought to give you an idea of its speed and mobility. It's like half the size of most of the entries somehow, but there was only one engine choice for this round, which means it has an excellent power to weight ratio. Combine that with 5 sets of chunky road wheels on long travel soft torsion bars, and you have a recipe for effortless runs on the assault course, like this run. You can see at a glance on this run the acceleration and top speed of the canteen. Albino Creeper, we need to talk about that name though. A speed machine like this deserves something less mundane, no? Anyway, as you can see, it's agile too, and has no problem with trenches or indeed hills. In fact, this was the only entry in the contest that we discovered could actually manage the 35-degree slope, which is always an amazing feat. It can cross all 3 sets of bumps and does so without causing the crew to spend the rest of the week limping. Step climbing is also part of this category of the competition, and the canteen couldn't repeat its 35-degree slope miracle here, but it managed the 0.5 meter step, which was good enough for one of the 2 available points there. There's no neutral steering with this design, sure, but it can go as fast backwards as it does forwards, which is pretty nuts, but hey, it means full marks for reversing. Oh, and did I mention this mad little machine can do 35 miles per hour? Because it can do 35 miles per hour, and that's a lot. So bravo, Albino Creeper, this is a seriously impressive little tank as far as mobility goes, which was of course the priority in this round. Next! I think it's time we did the sales pitch category. This one's not about how good you are at this game we call Sprocket, it's about the other side of this contest, the roleplay part. This is where we find out if you can sell your creation to the War Office. A good sales pitch will exhibit excellent salesmanship, making your tank sound good, even in the areas where it might not be. Plenty of depth and detail, and will have excellent presentation, usually in the form of images, and it will be written in character, that is, fitted to the era and scenario. This isn't a tank design contest for a video game in the 21st century. No, no, no. It's 1941, and you are competing for a production contract. Don't sell the tank to me, sell it to the British Army of World War II. Our bronze medalists for the sales pitch category are the T.E.A.B.A.G by Katza316 and the Conquistador A26A3 by the Man Gallify. Silver medals go to the LIA 30M1 Cardinal by 28th Stab Wound and the GDAV A26 Chaplain by Drallo. The category winner, however, is the C41 FCT Dread Knight by Terrianis, now Albino Creeper. That's a name that fits the tank, large, dark and imposing. The Dread Knight lives up to its name. But this isn't the aesthetics category. So what makes this sales pitch category winner? Well, Terrianis has given us an excellent example of the tried and true narrative pitch, as they have come to be called, further expanding upon the adventures of the now well-established characters of James and Rachie or Racy, I'm never sure, and of course the exploits of Black Iron Heavy Industries. Consequently, there's no question that this pitch is worthy of 10 out of 10 in the in-character subcategory. The photos here are plentiful and showcase the tank well. They're well framed and have the UI turned off, and they're in black and white, all of which helps their score. To go beyond this, some level of photo editing would be needed to get the highest possible scores. Similarly, this pitch could have gained another point for including a stat sheet, which is basically a free point in detail if you do it. But even without one, Terrianis has gone to great lengths to describe the tank in full detail, giving a comprehensive rundown of its facts, figures and capabilities, and crucially, to score high marks for depth, detail is given on factors and features that are not modelled in the game yet, like ergonomics, such that the tank feels fully fleshed out and thought through, as if it could exist in the real world. Finally, the salesmanship on display here is top-notch, and if you find yourself struggling to really sell or boast about your tank design, you should really check out this pitch and let it teach you how to make your tank sound good. There's lots of things you could pick up from Terrianis' pitch that will be helpful for writing your own ones. All in all, a great pitch. Well done, Terrianis, on this category win. Our fourth and final category is the pithily named Specification Criteria Exceeded category. This one goes out to all of the facts and figures lovers, me among them, where we hold your tanks up against the specifications set down in the challenge intro video and award points based on how much your vehicle managed to exceed the stated requirements. While the parameters that are specified may be broadly similar from round to round, the weighting we place on them will change to match the intended role and priorities of each specification. The bronze medalist by the numbers is the HMC M1941 by Comrade Kopnik. Bagging silver in this category, it's the AHI Canteen by Albino Creeper. But the category win goes to the M1 Interceptor by the Dogfather. The Interceptor is perhaps the least British looking tank in this round of the contest, but that's okay, as it's supposed to come from an American company anyway. It's also one of the fastest, and would have scored very well indeed in mobility if it wasn't for that 2-on-2 grouped suspension, which torpedoes its ability to manage obstacles, unfortunately. What does its speed have to do with specification criteria anyway, though, I hear you ask? Well, indeed, it has a lot to do with it, as this round I made it clear in the introduction video. When you're tasked with building a fast cruiser, speed is of course of the essence. So naturally, the strongest weighting for the scores was placed on top speed. At just over 33 miles per hour, the Interceptor lives up to its name as one of the fastest entries. And because speed was the key point in the specification, it actually falls under specification criteria exceeded and not mobility, which measures everything else instead. The Interceptor also made good use of shape and cast armor smoothing to make room for a whole bunch of good stuff while keeping the weight down to just 14.38 tons. Namely, a dedicated radio man, 90 rounds of ammunition, 750 litres of fuel, and an armor layout that was just sturdy enough to scoop up a good number of points for protection too. This tank also took home the bonus point for gun depression, which was secretly available, for its whopping minus 20 degrees. There's not much else to say here, other than congratulations to the Dogfather for nailing this specification, investing weight and space into the parameters that mattered for this type of vehicle without overdoing any of them, and therefore leaving enough spare to cover all the bases, and still get up to a good speed. Well done. Alright, With our category winners suitably celebrated, the time has come to present to you the Teabag Round 8 runner-up, who is none other than Unicycle Corn with the AC22E6 Moldavite. You want to know what makes Unicycle Corn one of the all-time greats in this competition? Presentation. If there was only the aesthetics and sales pitch categories in this contest, Unicycle Corn would quite probably be completely untouchable. Her attention to detail combined with her artistic talent yields tanks that are just gorgeous to look at. And the more you look, the more you see. And never more so was this true than with the Moldavite. The detail here is off the charts. The first time I loaded this tank in, I spent 10 minutes just finding all of the little decorative touches that elevate this design beyond simply a sprocket build. Unicycle Corn brings the same artistry and dedication to her sprocket builds as modelers do to their models. Beyond detail here, we have weathering, even storytelling. The requisite custom decals are here to mark this out as an authentically British tank, along with more British design language cues than you can shake a stick at. But beyond that, we have nose art. The tank has a name, Erebus. The crew have painted their own names on their home away from home. Welcome home, says the hatch. I could go on far too long about the aesthetics of this tank, or they really just speak for themselves. I didn't give it a perfect score, of course, we don't do that here. Had to knock one off for looking a little bit too Comet and therefore late war or something. As for the sales pitch, again, well, just look at it. The presentation here is again off the charts. In-character writing has spilled over into in-character visual presentation, and I love that. Full marks for presentation then, of course. But it's also impossible to fault the salesmanship, if you can call it that. As ever, Unicycle Corn gets creative with the framing of her pitches. This time, it's as a diary entry from the designer, but she waxes lyrical about her own work enough to score those points for salesmanship. The quality of the characterization, by extension, is of course top-notch, and unlike most others who attempt this more visual style of pitch, there's no appreciable lack of depth or detail here either. As my assistant judge put it, this pitch is just about perfect, and I agree wholeheartedly. You owe it to yourself to find it on Reddit and read it, and take notes. Who said lightning can't strike twice? It can in fact strike 3 times. In the mobility category, this tank was also top equal with the very best of them, and puts on an almost flawless display on the proving grounds, only failing to grab that elusive point for climbing the 35-degree slope, and the equally elusive one for the 0.75 meter step obstacle. Another near-perfect category score. So how did such a thoroughly excellent design not win then? Well, unfortunately there's a slight case of function following form here, and the Moldavite sadly loses out in the Specification Criteria Exceeded category, falling some 3.5 points behind the leaders here, which is enough to leave it 1.5 total score points behind. Good people of the Sprocket community, your T.E.A.B.A.G Round 8 winners, yes, winners, plural, are the KTP Mark 12 by Pedro1_1 and the Valkyrie A99 Lioness by Luminous Lily. Congratulations to both of you on the monumental total scores of 38 out of 40 each. Let's start with the Camp Tank Prototype Mark 12 by Pedro1_1. Those of you who have been around since the very beginning of this contest will know that Pedro was our very first champion with the Camp Tank Prototype Mark 2. Back then we were building austerity cruisers to fill a gap in tank supply after the retreat from Dunkirk. Now we are building their replacements, and Pedro has faithfully reworked and refined that same design into what you now see before you. A champion yet again, and a most fitting one at that. It's plain to see that Pedro decided that this was the moment to pull out all of the stops, and it certainly paid off. Aesthetics-wise, this is an unconventional one, as again, it has less of a typically British look than most. But Gabriel Kemp is based in Calgary, Canada, and when you apply that filter, this tank looks a very suitably transatlantic Commonwealth collaboration. The flag obviously is there just to pander to my sensibilities. Luminous Lily has even dubbed these panda flags, and what can I say, it works. At first glance, this design might not seem as detailed as the HMCM 1941 or the Moldavite, and in some ways it isn't, but there's plenty going on here. Obviously, the full suite of custom decals does wonders for both detail and national identity aesthetics. And the only thing better than a basket of clutter, TM, is 2 baskets of clutter. The turret is replete with optics, rangefinders and integrated smoke launchers. And I'm a particular fan, haha, get it, of these fans under the grills. It's a good look. That said, aesthetics isn't where this tank really shines. Pedro might not be as famous for tank design and prowess as Clockyard, but when Pedro 1_1 brings their A game, they are one of the very few who can outdo Clockyard when it comes to specification criteria exceeded and mobility. And Pedro has brought the A+ game this round. This is a seriously impressive machine, a paragon of untouchable engineering prowess, the yin to the Moldavite's aesthetic leaning yang. On the proving grounds, the KTP-Mark 12 boasted excellent handling despite having a twin transmission, which grants it the neutral steering ability for an extra point. It has a quick reverse speed, an exemplary trench and obstacle crossing capability. It couldn't quite manage the 35-degree slope, but was arguably the closest contender to the AHI Canteen in this regard, and it performed on par with the rest in step climbing obstacles, granting it a top equal score with the category winner. As far as specification criteria exceeded, this is just a frighteningly impressive beast. Just 14.8 tons, yet that buys you a dedicated radio man, 700 litres of fuel, 105 rounds of ammunition for the gun, 16.5 degrees of gun depression, and excellent gun handling by the way, and the single toughest all-round armour scheme in the competition, boasting armour that would make a Matilda II blush, while maintaining a top speed still in excess of 32 miles per hour. Formidable stuff. Finally, Pedro's sales pitch is technically excellent in terms of depth and very good in salesmanship, with plenty of pictures to show the vehicle off. It might not have the same wow factor as some of the very top scoring pitches, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with this pitch either, and it's a very, very solid entry. It sells the tank well and covers all its features, as a good pitch should. I particularly appreciated how integrated into the T.E.A.B.A.G canon this pitch is. It's very aware of its place in the long line of Kemp tanks, and in the storyline of T.E.A.B.A.G as a whole, as the worthy replacement to the Kemp Tank Mark II, which has been the mainstay cruiser tank of the British Army since the disastrous conclusion of the Battle of France. It's been a long wait to get back to the top spot, Pedro, but you knocked it out of the park this time. Congratulations, you really earned this win. And now to our joint champion, the A99 Lioness from Luminous Lily and the ladies of Valkyrie Motorworks. How does it feel to be a 4-time champion, Lily? Annette and Caitlin continue to impress with just how gosh darn spacious their unmistakable Valkyrie Motorworks form factor is. Lily manages to squeeze a simply preposterous amount of fuel, ammo and armour into her designs that make them hard to compete with. I'm just going to run you through the silly numbers on this little blighter. 15 tons gets you a dedicated radio operator, a twin transmission for neutral steering, 800 litres of fuel, 100 rounds of ammo for the 12-pounder, 10 degrees of gun depression, 105mm of frontal hull, and 130mm of frontal turret armour. Yes, this little cruiser is a tougher nut to crack than the Tiger from the front. And still a top speed of 32 miles per hour, and the same in reverse in fact, as absurd as driving a tank at 32 miles per hour backwards might be. As far as aesthetics goes, the Lioness gets 9s across the board. It's a very solid looking design, which clearly has had a lot of effort put into it. It's just slightly outshined in each subcategory by other designs, but it again manages to represent the unmistakable Valkyrie Motorworks design language. You can always pick the Valkyrie machine out of a lineup, yet takes it to a higher level than before, with more detail, like the sunshades over the vision ports, the custom decals including labels on the storage, and of course, the panda flag. I should point out that just because both our winners happen to have a panda flag does not mean one is required to win. It does help though. On the proving grounds, the Lioness can keep up with the KTP-Mark 12 in trench crossing, hill climbing, over the bumps, and also boasts uninhibited manoeuvrability despite its twin transmission, which of course permits it to pick up that extra point for neutral steering. Acceleration and reversing are also top notch. It falls one subcategory point short of its main rival, however, at the step obstacles, where it sadly failed to pick up any points, being unable to climb the 0.5 meter step in my tests. Finally, we come to the pitch for the A99, and well, it's a Luminous Lily pitch. Need I say more at this point? Lily's consummate mastery of the narrative pitch is doubtless what has led many others to branch out into fresh expressions of sales pitches in an attempt to gain an edge over her, as it may simply never be possible to beat her at her own game. As ever, It bears mentioning that a narrative frame with recurring characters can only contribute to the in-character subcategory score, and there's no extra points for a good story beyond that, even when you include such dramatic finales as Lily has done here, with poor Annette finding herself frog-marched out of her own presentation. What matters is the sales pitch within the narrative, and even though it is subjected to an abrupt ending in this case, Lily still brings us exemplary depth and detail, near flawless salesmanship, and plenty of period-appropriate looking photos, including that all-important stats table and the photo edit, in this case showing the lovely Caitlin Cogsworth at the commander's hatch. Luminous Lily pulled a blinder in this round to seize top equal points after 2 rounds of having had to hand her crown to Unicycle Corn. So again, congratulations to our worthy winners, your Teabag Round 8 champions, the KTP Mark 12 by Pedro1_1 and the A99 Lioness by Luminous Lily. Now then, before this video draws to a close, there is just time for a couple more things. Our Best Newcomer award is given out as often as I don't forget to include it, and I remembered it this time. So congratulations to Mao for the able and utterly adorable MSC 3-inch medium tank T8. And no, it's not 3 inches long despite its appearances, that refers to the caliber of the gun of course. Isn't it cute? It's like a chunky looks, and you can't help but fall in love with it. My assistant judges actually all took time out of their days to tell me how cute it was when I sent them the blueprints. It doesn't win Best Newcomer just for being cuddly though, no, this is a highly competent and competitive first entry. Those of you who have been paying attention will already know that it won a bronze medal in mobility, in which it performs particularly well. Its only drawbacks were hill climbing, where it proved only capable of the 25-degree slope, and handling, which I found to be hampered by its twin transmission. My rule for the handling point when it comes to twin transmissions is this: can I tell if it's a twin transmission or not? If I don't even notice it out on the proving grounds, then you get the point. Sadly, with the T8 it was evident, and so it lost out on that point. But it's a good-looking, well-thought-out design that scored well in aesthetics too, on par with the Lioness in fact. Its diminutive stature belies the fact that it's actually quite heavy at over 16 tons, and despite having good frontal protection, gun depression and a dedicated radio man, it only managed a slightly above average score in specification criteria exceeded, as it doesn't have the remarkable amounts of fuel or ammo, and it isn't quite as fast as you'd expect either, at just under 32 miles per hour, though still very respectable in this category. The pitch for this design proved to be its weakness, I'm afraid. The photos and depth and detail are solid, but there wasn't as much in the way of salesmanship or characterization as we might have hoped for, simply on account of it being just so short and to the point. All in all though, a strong and promising first entry, Mao. I do hope we'll be seeing more from you in future. You get this very tacky, but highly sought after, Best Newcomer trophy. And finally, the honourable mention this round goes again to Ben Cavan for having the most fun and endearing sales pitch presentation style, this time with the Cardigan Welsh Corgi Cruiser. However, it was a little bit short to pick up many points beyond presentation, I'm afraid, in the sales pitch. But I wanted to make sure you all saw it because I appreciate the effort and imagination that goes into this artwork, and because I don't want you to stop, Ben Cavan. It makes me smile. Keep doing it, please. And with that, ladies, gentlemen and friends, another round of Teabag draws to a close. You've all already seen the video and probably already submitted your designs for the prequel round, T.E.A.B.A.G Zero, so there's not much point saying, I'll see you back in 1928 for the next video, because, well, it was the last video, and so that would be silly. So I'll just say, thank you for watching, thank you for participating, and do please consider liking, commenting, and even subscribing if you enjoyed this results video, or are interested in this design contest. Every little bit of positive feedback does wonders for the morale to keep this contest running. I've been your host and friendly neighbourhood Sprocket subreddit moderator, T.E., and I'll catch you in the next video. Until then, take care out there.